National Lottery Community Fund.
Thank you, Nicola. Yes, so hi, I'm Judy. I am the funding officer for Wiltshire and Swindon, and I'm joined today by Catherine Stevens, who's the funding manager for the Wiltshire area as well. So I'm just going to share my screen. Can you all see that okay? Okay.
Not popped up on mine yet.
Has it not?
No.
Oh dear. How's that?
Great. Yeah, I can see it here.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about our funding programs, and a lot of the info I'll be sharing today. It'll be available on our website, and you can get more information by calling our advice line, and we'll also be sharing the slides, as Nicola said just then. So that's got some details, some links and some contact details. But this workshop is to talk a little bit about how you might approach an application to us and how you describe your project to funders. So if you have any questions, we can go through those at the end. But there'll be a couple of opportunities to break the questions as we go along as well. So we distribute funds raised by the National Lottery players. Of every £2 spent on a National Lottery ticket, about 56p goes to good causes. So we are the largest of the National Lottery distributors. So that means about 23 pence of every £2 that comes to us. So there are some numbers on the slide there just showing what we've awarded in the Southwest region in recent years. So as you can see, we are awarding on average around 2.9 million per year. So that's to a variety of different projects and organisations across Wiltshire and Swindon. So our overarching purpose is to invest in communities to help them thrive. So that is an intentionally broad aim that enables us to attract a broad range of applications. But we don't have enough funding to support every good proposal that we receive. So we're particularly interested in the proposals which show that the community standing to benefit from the project, they've helped to shape it and have shown strong support for the project to go ahead. So there's lots of principles that underpin our assessment framework, but we have a strong focus on these three things. So we ask ourselves, is the organisation and the project applying to us people-led? So when we talk about being people-led, what we really want to be sure of is that the projects we fund have involved the community in sort of the designing and the development of the idea. But it's also really great to see that beneficiaries are also on board in helping to deliver those activities. So we also ask if the organisation and the project is strengths-based. So in terms of strengths-based, we're looking for projects that identify and will build on the existing strengths within a community. So it's having an approach really that's telling us what's strong rather than telling us what's wrong with the community. So the final thing we look at is whether the organisation and the project is connected. So we recognise the importance of groups and organisations connecting and working in partnership in lots of different ways. So that could be sharing information, expertise, and even resources or responsibilities. So with this one, it is quite important that you get to know what others are doing in your area and more generally in Wiltshire and Swindon. So at the very least, this can help to reduce duplication. So if you learn that your idea is already taking place, you need to be honest about whether it's needed, whether your project would be filling a gap that exists locally, and what value you're adding for local people. So fundraising can become a bit challenging when you're in a sort of direct competition with similar projects in the area. So that's just something to bear in mind. So in addition to those three principles, we have three funding priorities, which are the same across all our funding programmes in England. So when we assess applications, we look at how well you meet one or more of these priorities. So the first one here is we want to support projects that build relationships in and across communities. So we'll look at how a proposal encourages people, possibly from diverse walks of life, to come together for a common purpose. We'll look at how well the project improves places and spaces that matter to communities. That doesn't have to be a building, it could be a park, or it could even be a virtual space. And thirdly, our priority remains those projects that focus on early intervention, so helping people at the earliest possible stage so they have the opportunity to thrive and hopefully avoid crisis. So going forward, although we're not running any emergency response programs, we're still interested to receive proposals which help with our recovery from the pandemic. So perhaps supporting those that have been most impacted, and we can also offer support to organisations to kind of adapt and potentially become more resilient to future challenges as they emerge. So it's worth following our social media channels to find out about any new funding opportunities that we may be offering if you use social media. But our two main funding programmes they run year-wide, year-round even, they are Awards for All and Reaching Communities and Partnerships. So they're the two that I'm going to focus on now. So Awards for All, this is our main small grants programme, which primarily supports smaller grassroots organisations. It is our most popular programme, so you can apply for anything between £300 and £10,000. There's a relatively quick turnaround, so most applicants find out if they've been successful in under 12 weeks. You can apply at any time, there's no deadline for any applications, and you can have more than one award consecutively, but not at the same time. So if you get one award, you have to wait till the official 12 months end date has passed before you'd be able to apply again. If you apply and you're unsuccessful, you can reapply. You don't have to wait the 12 months, but you'll likely be given some feedback about your project, which you'll need to address if you're coming back to us with the same project. So Awards for All, on the form, there are 3 questions on the application form. So the 3 questions are, what would you like to do? Number 2, how does your project meet at least one of our funding priorities? And number 3, how does your project involve your community? So just as a quick reminder, the funding priorities that we would be asking you about in question 2 are building relationships in and across communities, improving places and spaces that matter to communities, and early action to help people reach their potential. And then question 3, how does your project involve your community? That relates to the extent to which your project is people-led, which I touched on earlier. So Awards for All, you can see that we fund a wide range of project costs to support your proposal. So with a request for refurbishment of a building or some improvement renovation, it is important that you can demonstrate that you either own the land or the building, or that you have a lease that cannot be ended for 5 years. On the topic of buildings and maintenance, sometimes people worry that it's hard to make a funding request related to buildings and their maintenance seem appealing to a funder. But it's not really, because we understand that buildings require maintenance. And what's important to show us is what we consider is what happens in the building and how that's going to benefit the community. So here we have a couple of examples of projects that we funded through Awards for All. So we awarded £5,592 to STEP in Swindon. They used the funding to provide therapeutic support workshops to help children who are vulnerable and have complex issues through welfare and health circumstance. And then the other example here is we have a village shop in Wiltshire. So we provided some funding to them to assist with the cost of purchasing a new fridge and freezer. So the village shop is a volunteer and a community-led project. And crucially, the demand for these improvements was coming from their feedback and the requests and the feedback from the local community. So all our grants are published on our website, and you can search by local area. So it is sometimes good to have a quick look and see what we've funded recently locally to you, just to get an idea and some examples of the kinds of projects that we fund. Awards for All, we're getting some good a good number of applications coming in from Wiltshire groups. and we would definitely welcome more. But we're also particularly keen to see some more applications coming in from Swindon, where we don't see quite as many. So if you're interested in applying for Awards for All and looking for a bit more advice, there are some blogs and tips on our website about how to make a good Awards for All application. And you can also phone our advice line at any time with any questions that you may have. So Awards for All success rate fluctuates. So from month to month, it can be different, but there's normally between 50 to 55% success rate. So pretty good. Awards for All can be good for those sort of smaller one-off projects, or to test a new piece of work, or for those maybe smaller capital, needs that you may have. So we do prioritise groups with smaller incomes on Awards for All, but it can be a good way to experience our funding if you've not applied for our funding before. So we often have groups who maybe have 1 or 2 Awards for All awards, and then move on to the larger funding through Reaching Communities, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I was just going to give the opportunity now just to see if you have any questions at all about Awards for All.
Hello, I've just got a quick question. When you mentioned about Awards for All, you can apply every year. If you're doing an Awards for All, can you still apply for a Reaching Communities one as well?
Yes, you can. Yes, so you can have an Awards for All and a Reaching Communities award at the same time.
Thank you.
No problem. I can't see you, sorry. So just shout out questions.
A quick question as well, because you were talking about it is quite a vast amount of things that can be applied for. And would you say it's better if you have many projects going on, is it better to do one specific application for one project rather than mix it up? I'm just thinking, if you had a one-off event, but you're also looking for staff costs for the whole year sort of thing, is it better to do 2 separate applications on 2 different occasions, or could you mix it all up in one?
So for Awards for All, you can only have one award at once. So yeah, I think if you can bundle some of those costs together and present it as one application, as long as that's below the £10,000 limit for the Awards for All, then you could do that, yes. Otherwise you'd be waiting 12 months. But yeah, if it was more than £10,000, then you could consider Reaching Communities, which I'll speak about. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Great.
Hi. This Awards for All, would it include covering costs to update a security system? This is for the hydrotherapy pool. All our cameras are typically worn out. They were second hand apparently when they were put in over 30 years ago. Recorders packed up and everything, and the police keep advising us to update our security system. It's going to cost around £4,000 to do it. Does this Awards for All cover anything like that?
Yeah, so potentially it could be something that you'd applied to, but you just have to remember when you're making your application is our priorities for funding. So how this is going to benefit the community. So it's just helping us to understand.
This would be a double whammy. It would be protection for the staff, protection for the building, and for the people using it, especially when they come in at night, because all the doors are automatic to allow easy entry, and there's no cameras monitoring the entrances and exits, and that. This would be one of the advantages of it.
Yeah. So, Catherine, did you want to add anything?
Hi, morning everyone. So potentially I think you can make an application, as Judy said. I think as we're saying, it's really relating it back to our priorities and the kinds of difference we're looking to see being made through our funding. So it's sort of being able to relate it back and how it will improve the experience for the community that use that facility. It's kind of emphasising those points really, but there's definitely the potential to apply.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Judy, I don't think you can see, so Nikki Cushion from Elaborate, you've got your hand up, haven't you?
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you. I know you've just said about one application in 12 months, but can you have one application in for Wales and one in for England?
I'm actually not sure, Catherine. I only operate in England, so I'm not actually sure.
So I think you can. I think we're going to have to check that actually, because I've not been asked that before. But it's separate in each country. So I think yeah, you can, because it's England awards for all. But let us double check, and we'll come back through Wiltshire Community Foundation. But I think you can. But I just want to double check that one actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for that question. Not sure. Sorry, have we got any other questions? I can't see you all. So
there's one in the chat from, apologies if I've got this wrong, Freak Fit. They've asked, can you make an application to help complete a project? They haven't requested any funding from the National Lottery to date. I don't know if you're here and wanted to ask the question yourself. Freak Fit. No. Yes, I don't know if you can answer that one, Judy.
Yeah, that's again potentially looking at where the project's up to, and yeah, what you need to finish off that project. But again, linking it back to our priorities that I've got on the slide there. So how is it helping, and oftentimes if it's a project that you've already been working on, sometimes with funding, if it's a new idea, you're obviously having to prove a concept sometimes. And if it's a project that you've either done before or that you're partway working through, then sometimes you obviously, because you've been doing the project, you can show the benefit it's been having. So yeah, just remembering to obviously put all that evidence in when you're applying to us. But Catherine, do you have anything to add to that?
Again, yes, because of finishing a project, what we can't do is pay for costs that you've already incurred. So we can't fund kind of for things that you've paid for. But if you're looking at costs going forward to finish off a project, again, if you can show the community benefit, the community engagement, and how it potentially fits one of those funding priorities, then again, we can look at that.
Peter, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, please. I'm the chair of the trustees for the Harnham Danes Centre, which is an ongoing thing. But looking to the future, our funding having been cut, our costs are not going to be met in the future. So looking for grants in order to keep things going. And if at all possible, increase the number of old people who are members of our club so that more people benefit in the community. Does that fall within your remit?
Yes, potentially, yeah. Yeah, it's again, looking at the community benefit, obviously how you're working with that particular community. Yeah, but we're kind of aware that that's something that's kind of going on in Wiltshire, that yeah, the day centres are having funding cuts. So maybe if there's something you want to have a conversation with, I'm going to share my with me about. I'm going to share my email address, my contact details, so we can touch base on it separately as well.
Thank you very much indeed.
No problem.
Judy, there's a couple of questions in the chat, which I don't know if you've got to answer now or wait to the end. So Deb's asked a question about who's eligible to apply for the grants. Do they need to be a registered charity?
Yeah, so yeah, but there's a range of different organisations. So you can be a charity, you can be unincorporated, you can be a social enterprise like a community interest company. So it's more private individuals and like profit-making organisations that we don't really fund. And there was certain activities that we don't really fund. So things that sort of to do with like some promotion of like religious activities, for example, we can't fund. Yeah, have I missed anything there, Catherine?
No, I just think, yeah, the question, we can fund unincorporated associations. Yeah, we would just need to check your just the governance arrangements and your bank account and things like that. But there's further details on the website. But we can fund a range of incorporated, so charities and unincorporated organisations, through Awards for All and through Reaching Communities.
Yeah.
So I can see there's a couple more questions as well. There's a question about Awards for All. Can you apply for a second Awards for All grant while still working on another one? So what I would say there is you can start working on the potential further application to Awards for All, but you shouldn't submit that until you've formally ended and had your existing Awards for All grant signed off. And then you can, you know, start with your new application. And then we've got a question: do you fund special needs schools? And yes, we do fund special needs schools. With work supporting schools, what we say is that we can't support the direct delivery of the curriculum. So if it's anything directly supporting the national curriculum in any way, then we can't support that, because that's kind of stepping into statutory funding. But we can fund lots of things around schools, which might be at lunchtime or out of school activities, or other things that are kind of wrap around that schools do with their children and young people. Has that answered people's questions, or has anyone got any follow-up from it for any of those, or any further questions on Awards for All? Are we okay?
Great. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about reaching communities and partnerships. So this is the main programme for larger grants. So this is the programme that I primarily work on. So it provides grants of over £10,000, and it can also support multi-year projects, so up to 5 years. You can apply at any time and have one at the same time as Awards for All. And you apply online as well via our website, in the same way that you can apply for Awards for All. But if you aren't comfortable doing that for whatever reason, you can call our advice line or email us, and we'll discuss other options for submitting an application with you. So we can support a single organisation, or we can bring organisations together, so hence the partnerships option. We can support a broad range of projects and costs. So that might be activity costs or your core running costs. We can fund the expansion of existing projects or new projects. We can support capital projects, be that a building refurbishment or outside facility or a vehicle, for example. We can also support organisations to develop and focus on things like financial or operational planning or restructuring, and things like measuring impact, that sort of thing. So Reaching Communities applications, they're assessed by the local team. So it is a rolling programme with no deadlines. And we try to take a conversational approach and be flexible in how you apply and how long it takes for you to work on your idea if it is invited to full proposal. So you can talk to me as your local funding officer. So before you make an application, if you have an idea you want to discuss, or you just have a question about the programme, then you can get in touch with myself as the Wiltshire funding officer. So here's a couple of examples of projects that we funded through Reaching Communities. So the Well City Partnership Grant in Wiltshire is a collaborative project between 4 partners to run creative courses for vulnerable people. So for example, those affected by mental health needs, loneliness, isolation, and those in contact with primary or secondary healthcare. So this project had added value through its partnership working, as all groups had vast experience working with different local groups, and give the people involved wider volunteer and signposting opportunities when working in partnership. And then that second example there, we have the Swindon Carer Centre. So we funded them to cover core costs of salaries and volunteer expenses for young carer champions. So those young carer champions were offering support to each other in schools and colleges to kind of work to improve self-esteem, life chances, and sort of academic performance, as well as strengthening relationships with like teachers and their peers. So this project, it's demonstrated a very user-led approach in through its involvement of young people, young carers in the design and delivery of that project. So I'll quickly just give you the opportunity to ask a couple of questions that you might have about reaching communities, but I'm going to go on to an example and just talk a bit about how you might approach an application to us. So have we got any questions about reaching communities?
We've got a question which I can answer, which is, can you have a reaching communities and a partnerships application or grant at the same time? And so the answer to that is yes, in principle, you can have a reaching communities application or indeed a grant and then be involved in a separate partnership bid. In those circumstances, we just would need to understand how those two different applications or potential grants kind of sat together, that there was no duplication, and for that kind of wider need to have those two. But yeah, absolutely, in principle, you could be having a reaching communities grant at the moment and delivering something and then working on a separate partnership bid with some wider partners and submit that application as well. And then we would obviously look at the context and the need and its fit with the programme. So I can see, is that Nikki has raised her hand?
It's actually Kirsty who wants to ask the question, but yes.
Hi, sorry, just following on from that, you just said that you can have the reaching communities and partnership. Can you be the lead partner in the partnership one if you're holding the reaching communities? Or are you saying you need to be part of a partnership as a secondary?
No, you can be the lead. Yeah, absolutely. You can be the lead as well. It's obviously, yeah, what makes sense to that partnership. Yeah, you can do both.
No, yeah, this reaching communities and partnership funding, the Thames and Hydrotherapy Pool, we're in discussion with different people at the moment as regards, it was to refelt the roof before getting solar panels fitted, but now the suggestions come forward to put these profiled insulated sheets on the roof. I'm not sure, I would anticipate a cost of probably £100,000 to £150,000. Is this something the National Lottery would be able to help us out on?
So we will fund capital projects, as Judy said, through reaching communities. So that can be larger refurbishments and renovation. Again, so in principle, yes, but again, then we have to look at the context. So with capital, what we look at is what else have we funded in that area, especially around capital projects, because the demand can be quite high. So we're always looking at how we can make sure that the funding is, shared equitably across Wiltshire and Swindon. So we'd look at what else we funded in that area, and then we'd start to look at, the reasons why. Was it a good fit with the programme? What impact will it have overall on your community? With a capital application as well, we might look at whether we're the sole funder of it or whether you've got some match funding coming in as well.
Well, that would be the general idea, to try and get other organisations to help fund it as well. This is one of the suggestions put forward.
Yeah, so it is in principle something we can look at, and you can suggest you have a conversation with Judy after today as well. We can find out a little bit more about it. But yeah, we just have to look at all the different capital applications that are coming in and try and sort of make decisions about the strongest projects and the best fit, because it can be competitive. And I think also, I think also what we're noting generally with capital projects is the costs as well. So often a project comes in and we understand they're complex, they take a long time, and then what's happening with building materials or with resources or with people to work on the project is those costs are going up as well. So we just need to think about those things as well.
Yeah, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that all the questions?
We've got Brian as would like to ask a question.
A question about matched funding. I mean, I guess that we could get funding from, I don't know, another organisation, but is there a requirement for some funding for the people applying for the grant?
There's no requirement for match funding. No, we will be the sole funder, and we are for lots of reaching communities where we're the only organisation, only funder funding that particular project. It's just sometimes if you do have match funding to bring to the table, then it's obviously reducing your ask from us. It's shown you've got buy-in from other funders, or from or it may be from the local community itself, or it may be through income that you generate. So it's absolutely not a requirement. Each project is different. Each project application is different. So you can come to us, and we will look at being the sole funder of a project.
For the whole 100% of the cost?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Who got, is that a question now from Tony? I'm sorry, I can see certain people. I'm sorry if I'm missing some people, but I can see Tony's got his hand up now.
Yes, thanks. This is actually just following on from Brian's question, and I know I'm going to track back into the awards for all for the same question regarding match funding. I'm assuming it's not vital, but it would help. Am I correct in saying that?
So for awards for all, which is up to £10,000, if you just need up to £10,000, then it's absolutely fine to apply for that. You really don't need match, and there isn't any particular weighting given to match funding. So, but obviously, if your overall project is £15,000 and you come to us for the 10, then we just need to have an understanding, confirmation of where the match funding is coming from. But you don't need to demonstrate match to be successful for awards for all.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have some questions in the chat, so I'll just have a look at that. So we talked about match funding. Then we've got a question: can you have reaching communities grants in different areas, i.e. one in Wiltshire for a neighbouring county but different projects? Yeah, so you can have reaching communities grants for different areas. So it can either be in one project, so it's what makes most sense. So a project working in Wiltshire could also be working in Dorset or Gloucestershire or wider. So it's whatever the natural area is for that project and what makes sense for that project and what you're responding to in respect to the community support. So they don't have to, your geographic area is what's determined by the need and how you're responding to that. Or it could be a community of interest. So it could be that you're working right across the southwest, but it could be with a particular community. So it's very flexible in the approach. We then have a question: can an organisation have more than one project related reaching communities grants at the same time? You can hold more than one reaching communities award at any one time. Again, we would look at what else we're funding. We'd look at the particular needs around that. And also, again, we're really keen to engage and reach out to lots of different organisations, and perhaps organisations that haven't had reaching communities monies from us before. So it's always a balance of looking at all the different factors. But you can hold multiple reaching communities grants at the same time. Would you fund repairs and improvements to a community library run by parish council, where the premises are leased from a Swindon Borough Council on 99-year lease? The parish are responsible for maintaining the integrity of the building according to the lease. So yeah, as we've discussed, we can fund repairs and renovations. That would include looking at community library as well. So in principle, we can do that. And again, if you have something in mind, then we can have a conversation with you after today. If you contact Judy, we can talk a little bit more about that idea as well. I think that's the questions in the chat, and then is there Danielle now with her hand up?
Hi, there's two of us here. Danielle's with me. My name's Lynn Evans. We have a charity in North Wiltshire, and part of our work is children's centres work, which is commissioned by the local authority. But we also have a whole other side of the charity that works with young people that we'd be interested in putting a bid in for. However, we operate all under the same budget. So on the budget, it would look like we were being commissioned by the local authority, but that's only for the children's centre work, and the actual application, lottery application, would be for other charitable work that we do that is not funded by the local authority. Would that matter?
No, we can look at we fund organisations that are commissioned to do certain work, as say through the statutory sector or through the local authority or through the NHS or whatever. And then if you have a discrete project that sits outside of that, as long as we can see that there's a separate budget, that there's no overlap with those budget lines and who we're funding, and it's quite distinct what the Reaching Communities project is and how it sits outside of that statutory work, then we can have a conversation and talk about that.
Brilliant, thank you, that's great, thank you.
Is that all the questions at the moment? I think we're okay, yeah. So
Great,
I'll come back to Judy.
Thank you, Catherine. Great, so just want to mention, it's just worth saying at this point that while all the information about our mission and priorities that I've given so far, all of that's correct at the moment, but we are in the process of a strategy renewal, and this is to ensure that we are supporting communities to thrive in the best possible way. So I'm just going to, this next slide I'm going to show is just a timeline of our strategy renewal. So we're still in the discovery phase of this process, so that first purple hexagon. So the strategy renewal, it may set a new direction for the fund, but as you can see there, any changes that we make are looking to be implemented from spring next year. So strategy renewal wise, if that's something that you want to contribute to, we're very keen to listen to what matters to communities. We're exploring sort of thoughts and ideas and combining what we hear with sort of other sources of evidence to take judgment on where we can kind of make the biggest difference for communities in the years ahead. So if you'd like to be involved in that conversation, then there are a couple of ways that you can do that on the slide there. So we've got our website, puttingcommunitiesfirst.org.uk, and then the hashtag TNLCF strategy renew. So we would really welcome your feedback and ideas. So if you have any time, then please do have a look at the website and consider dropping any ideas to us via the email address there on the slide as well. Okay, so this bit I'm going to do an exercise which will hopefully help you with planning your application for funding to us. So this planning tool is intended to help you provide strong answers to funders when they ask you about the difference that your project will make and why it's important to the people who will benefit from it. So if you do this preparation work, the hope is that you'll write more focused applications, and also when you're starting to look at potential funders, you'll be able to identify more easily which funders you might apply to. So the idea here is that every great project starts with a door, and the people, which is hopefully yourselves, the people who understand those issues, that the issues that matter to most to those people walking through your door. So if you picture who walks through your door and focus on those who access your activities the most often, can you describe them? What are the key issues that they typically arrive with? And what do they tell you is stopping them from doing anything about their issues? So what are the barriers that they face? So in this example, which we've anonymised, we have an organisation that has a town centre venue, and it helps young people who aren't in employment, training or education. So they've identified their main users as 18-year-olds, so kind of older teenagers, and many are presenting with depression and anxiety, and they're saying that they feel isolated and they spend a lot of time alone in their rooms. They've lost confidence, and their self-esteem is fairly low, and they're feeling a bit left behind as at that sort of age. Their peers, a lot of them are moving on to university. So I'd like to note here that it is great for projects to be inclusive and open to all, and we would certainly encourage that. But it's just useful from a funder perspective to get an idea of the main users of your project or service. So one of the key things any funder wants to know is where their pound is going specifically. So who do you expect is going to benefit? So the next question to ask is, how do you know what issues they're facing? So what evidence do you have that these are the key issues and barriers? This is where we come to how you've involved people in designing your projects. So if you're applying to us, you need to be explicit about how you've consulted with the people who you hope to benefit from the project. So be clear about what that consultation looked like. It doesn't matter if it was quite informal, but just be explicit about what they've told you, and if it isn't already obvious, how that has shaped your idea. It's also good to tell us about how they'll continue to be involved in developing or even supporting you to deliver your project. So there's lots of evidence that getting people involved early on to help develop your project can increase the impact of it. And at the very least, if you've provided what people have asked for, their chances of engaging with it are often higher. So now that we've looked at the who, the next step in this exercise is you're supposed to look at what activities you're going to provide, but I think I'm going to jump to the what difference does it make bit. It just makes more sense to me to do it this way around. So I think it focuses you on what you want to achieve early on, so you have that in your mind when you're looking at your activities. So if you know what issues people have, it should be quite easy to describe what needs to change. So that's what outcomes are. They're the sort of tangible changes that you're hoping to bring about. So some funders require you to provide them with like a short list of outcomes, or to meet specific outcomes that they've set themselves, while other funders may be kind of happy with a more general statement of your aim and what you plan to achieve. So there can be some variation between funders. But in this example, the main users are telling us that they're feeling quite isolated. So that's certainly something that we'll want to reduce. And they're telling us that they lack confidence and self-esteem, and that's not helping them. So that's something that we want to try and increase. And they've not been accessing opportunities for development, and they're feeling held back. So let's try and increase skills so that they have more options. So straight away there you can see that we have kind of 3 or 4 clear outcomes about reducing isolation, increasing confidence and self-esteem, and increasing access to development opportunities. So at that point, that's when I'd start thinking about the activities. So what people have told you that they'd like to do. So how are you going to be providing that? Who is going to be involved? When will that take place? Where will that take place? And what do they need to make it happen? So essentially, we're wanting to make sure that it all aligns and that you can clearly link your activities to your outcomes. So can you confidently say that what you're planning is really going to achieve the impact that you're hoping for? Or do you need to go back to people, maybe get some more information, or even explore some new ideas, or develop your idea a bit further? So once you think you've really made sense of your project, then you can start looking more closely at funders and direct your energies towards those that seem the best fit for your plans. So if you don't really fit the priorities of a particular program, it's unlikely to be a good use of your time in applying, and we know how much time and energy is involved. So in this example, I'm hoping this example shows that it's easy to link everything up and see how it will meet our program priorities. So it includes activities that will bring young people together to help develop stronger relationships and help to address the isolation that young people have said that they're feeling. It includes both training and social activities that are going to help a young person get back on track and fulfill their potential. So hopefully before any isolation and other issues have turned into a longer term problem. And it includes a drop-in service at their venue, which is going to provide a welcoming space for young people to go to. So as I mentioned, our priorities are intentionally broad. So that does mean that there's high demand for our funding. That can impact on the success rate, particularly on our larger grants. So the success rate for reaching communities at the moment is around 1 in 5 in the Southwest. So the Awards for All success rate, as I said earlier, it tends to be around 1 in 2. So hopefully this activity is giving you the opportunity, it's kind of giving you the best chance to be really specific, to show how how to be really specific and focused in the information that you provide to us, or to any funder. So doing some of this work can help with that. And I'd say don't do it on your own. Don't submit an application without having someone or other people from your group or household even just read it and then offer their input. So even sort of larger organisations that have their own in-house bid writers will have a number of people input into their applications. So if you're unsure of anything, don't be afraid to ask. You can pick up the phone and call our advice line. They're very friendly, or you can drop us an email query. So there's a general inquiries email that's on the website there, on the slide there, sorry, and you've also got my direct email. So our website also has a search funding, so you can look at search function, so you can look at previous funding that we've made, which I mentioned earlier is helpful to look at. So if you come across something that's similar to what you're trying to do, perhaps approach that group and see if they'd be happy to answer some questions or give you some advice from the perspective of a successful applicant. There is also a lot of information on our website about how to make a good application. So we've got stuff on there about how to undertake good community engagement, about sort of drafting your outcomes and undertaking evaluation and learning. So yeah, there's loads on there. And you can also ask your CVS for support. And if they can't help, then they can signpost you to us, which is to make a note of my email address there. So I think that's it. Have you got any other questions at this stage?
Hi, I'm really sorry, Judy. My Wi-Fi fell off, so I missed the last couple of minutes. When I click on chat, it keeps kicking me off. So, Nicola, are you okay to just have a look at the questions in the chat for us?
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. So I think that there are a couple of questions in the chat, Judy and Catherine. Let me just go up. So one says around, how long does it take to get a decision on a Reaching Communities grant application?
Yeah, so when you first put an application into us, you'll usually get an email, and what we try to do is then give you an outcome within 12 weeks. So that would be whether or not we'd like to take you forward to the next stage of the process. So yeah, if you're invited through to the next stage, there's usually another 12 weeks that turnaround period that we would give, we would aim for to try and give you a final decision on that. Although it can sometimes take longer, just if there's information that you're trying to gather, and you need time to do that, then it can be fairly flexible. But those are the sort of timeframes that we work towards. So it's worth bearing that in mind, definitely, because if you've got an existing project that's maybe coming to an end, yeah, don't leave it until it's ended, because there's obviously that sort of window of a few months where you may need to sort of prepare your application and then be going through our processes. So yeah, if you're looking to potentially fund something, you may be wanting to be thinking ahead around maybe around 6 months ahead.
Brilliant. So there are a couple of questions focusing on the application process. I don't know if you could just walk us through that. Some people are asking, do you have to complete an expression of interest form? What the stages of the process look like? Is there a conversation with you as funding officers?
Yeah, so you can just go ahead and just go ahead and apply on our website. It might be useful for me to, if I'm still screen sharing, perhaps it would be useful for me to just show you the application. This is Awards for All England. So this is the main website. So it just gives you an over. Can you see that?
No, you might need to stop your share and then reshare.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. It's coming up now.
Sorry, I haven't put it on the right screen. Classic. So yeah, this is the Awards for All. So yeah, you just go into our website, go into funding here, and then it'll bring up a list of different funding programs. So it just confirms again, like what sort of amounts are, what our priorities are, and then down here, how to apply, and then you just press apply online, so you get it all started there. And there's a bit more information here about who can apply, so the types of groups that we accept, and the kind of groups that we can't accept applications from, and other things about other things we look into, and yeah, the projects that we fund. So this is just a reminder of our priorities and the type of things we're interested in, and what you can spend your money on and what you can't spend the money on if you're successful. So just worth having a read of that. And then if you just go back into the funding programs here, we've got Reaching Communities England. And again, this is very similar, just a reminder of our priorities, and again, just apply here, who can apply, projects that we fund, what you can spend your money on. That sort of information is basically the same for Awards for All and Reaching Communities. But yeah, it's just this portal here. So you can start an application, you can save it, you can come back to it. So hopefully that is useful.
So once somebody submitted the grant application form, it will be generally 12 weeks until they hear. And will they have a conversation with someone, or is it just an email response back?
So you submit the application. It really depends. So sometimes we could have a lot, depends on the level of information that you provided. But yeah, it could be that we are really happy with the information that we've got and we feel that we can make a decision on that. So it may be that you don't hear from us, but often, and probably more often than not, we'll have some communication with you just with some additional questions that we might like to know a bit more about if we if it hasn't been covered in your application, because obviously sometimes there are things that it's just, there's a character limit, I think, and yeah, so there's always opportunity to continue to have that conversation about what's going on. Often we will make, if we've read your application, but on paper it's not, we only have feel we have an outline of what's happening, we really want to get a better sense of that, we may well visit your project, and so we'd be in touch with you to see if that's something that we can arrange. So yeah, you'll hear from us, you'll have obviously submit your application, you'll have my contact details, so that you if there's any development or any new information that you want to share throughout the process, then you'll be able to do that with myself.
Great, thanks Judy. Now Irene, I see you've got a question in the chat, but you've also got your hand up, so it might be easier if you want to ask the question yourself.
It was the question in the chat. I'm aware that we've come to this meeting today, and if we then prepare a stage 1 application, that could take up to 12 weeks for an answer. Then preparing stage 2 application in a further 12 weeks, how that will take us into next spring, or could do. And so how is that going to be affected by this strategy you're now developing to be launched next spring?
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, so we obviously we're still operating under our current principles. So any decision making we make in that process before the strategy renewal comes in, we would be making a decision on what we have in place already. But yeah, it is a good point that things might change. So yeah, just worth kind of keeping an eye on that, and yeah, sort of being aware of what's happening. But yeah, at this point nothing's been decided. It could be that we stick with the principles that we have now. So yeah, we're very much just kind of looking and exploring and discovering at this stage, so it's hard to kind of say how it will affect things going forward. hope that's somewhat helpful. I know it's a bit vague.
I think what I just add to that is we will definitely have a transitional period, and we've kind of always done that in the past, so that if we've got applications in under existing programs, then we'll make sure that those are assessed and dealt with. So, you know, your application will still be valid. And if we're going to close or change a program in any significant way, we'll obviously give as much notice as we can to the voluntary and community sector, because we know that you're working on these ideas all the time. So we'll give you that kind of period to know. We won't suddenly say, sorry, you know, we can't look at this now, things have changed. We will obviously keep the sector informed and make sure that there's that proper transition.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know we're nearing the end of time, so I don't know if you want to take one or two questions, and then perhaps we can answer the other questions that are in the chat offline and send it to people afterwards. Would you be quite happy to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So there's two questions in particular. They're looking at, your website, will it provide any guidance on what kind of outcome measurements you might be looking for? And also what you might be looking for if they are successful in getting a grant at the end of the grant. Is there any guidance on the website on that?
Yeah, so there is some guidance around impact measurement and all that sort of stuff, which you can send. However, our approach is that we want any measurement that you do in terms of, you know, measuring the difference and the impact that your project is making, we want that to be helpful to you. We don't want you to be doing it because we are asking for it. We want it to be something that you're able to, you know, develop a learning culture around and helps you to develop your project and works for you. So we have no kind of set way of doing it. We're very flexible in that way. But yeah, there is some helpful sort of just guidance to kind of get you thinking about it, but no sort of specific templates or anything that we operate by. How you do that is potentially up to you. Was there a second part of that question?
No, there's just a few questions that sort of always looking at the same. Is there a maximum amount allowed to be applied for the reaching communities?
I forget this. Generally, there isn't a maximum, but we have, well, there's a level of ask that would be, you know, significant in terms of the amount of money that we, you know, have to allocate out for the region. And so the processes that I've described today would be for anything up to 500,000. Anything over 500,000, similar process, but it would go to our England committee to make the decision, just because it's a large, it would be obviously represent a much larger investment. Have you got anything to add to that, Catherine?
No, that's right. So we don't have an upper limit, but as Judy said, anything over 500,000 goes to our England committee and has to be kind of an exceptional project with exceptional kind of outcomes, because it's such a large and would represent such a large part of our spend for the Southwest region. In general terms at the moment, again, it fluctuates, but our average grant size under reaching communities is about 199,000 at the moment, over an average of 2.8 years at the moment. So it's generally about 3 years of funding, but obviously within that we're funding things that are just over £10,000, and we're funding things, you know, up to 450, up to 500,000 as well. So there's a real mix, but that kind of gives you an indication of the average at the moment.
You both. Well, we have just slightly overrun now, so we will go through the chats after we finish today and make sure we answer any questions and provide you with some signposts and links that would be helpful to you. I'd just like to thank Judy and Catherine for both coming along and talking us through the National Lottery Community Fund grant programmes. We will be sending out the links to the slides via email. That will go out probably sometime later this afternoon or tomorrow. We have recorded the session, so there's an opportunity for you to go back and also watch it at your leisure again, should you wish to do so. We'll also send a copy out of our slides detailing our current grant programmes that are out at the moment and application process, along with our next events and workshops. But as Judy and Catherine have said, we are always at the end of the telephone or email. So if you have got any questions directly for us, then please do get in contact with us. And thank you for joining us. Once again, hope to see you at some of our other events in the forthcoming months. Bye-bye.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.